Oh, spoiler alert on all the data points. One of the most important ones is not customer count.
None of them
None of them.
are member count.
Welcome to the PushPress podcast,
Where gym owners learn to dodge bad advice, crush their competition, and actually make money doing what they love. Let's get after it. But before we start, today's episode is brought to you by Just for Fun CrossFit
I love that shirt.
out of Fremont, California. One of our funnest clients, I would say. Look at this shirt.
I'm jealous. I want that shirt.
Yeah.
Come on now, just for fun. Send your boy a shirt.
JFF.
All right. So we've been doing some 2025 planning over the last several months. And, we at PushPress, we have a very complex business model, as you well know, Dan Size.
Overly complex. Oh, my Lord.
Multiple tabs, thousands of rows in a spreadsheet. I built our very first version several years ago. We call it the Blueprint. And then I met with you in Denver to work on our book. Dan and I are writing a book, in case you didn't know. More about that later. Anyways, we started building a model for gyms as part of that. And I quickly got into levels of detail that were probably unnecessary. Well, they were unnecessary, right? And that's just kind of how my mind were spiraling into all these different data points that every gym would need to really hone in on, and if they wanted to create just the most kick-ass business in the world. And one of your gifts, Dan, that I really appreciate is you were able to pull me out of that spiral and focus on what are the most important data points for a gym. And that's kind of what I think inspired this episode a little bit, is how can we help provide some focus here? And so I'd like to maybe dive into this and see spoiler alert on all the data points. One of the most important ones is not customer count.
None of them
are
member count. So
that's the bench press of
hey. Some of us like the bench. But yes, member count, that means jack shit.
It doesn't at all. So kick us off, Dan.
Yeah, cool. So the first one we're going to talk about is it's your back squat of metrics, if you will, or maybe your deadlift. It's just simply your MRR, ARR. And one thing we're going to do as we talk about metrics is we're going to try and get gym owners talking in the types of metrics that software companies are measured by, because there's been a crap ton of thought and process put into SaaS metrics. SaaS is software as a service, for those of you who don't know. And what I've come to realize as I'm building out our financial models and our metrics is gyms are service as a service. What we're doing with software is just a virtual value delivery system that people pay monthly recurring for. Same thing in a gym, except people are showing up in your gym, and if you do well for them, they keep paying you monthly. So the entire business model is exactly the same. So let's use the same terms.
One also note here, gonna have a lot of acronyms.
Oh.
We'll try to break them down for you as we go.
Good point. I would have blown right by that. MRR, ARR, monthly recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue, right? Why are these important? This is important because this actually measures your predictable, reliable, recurring revenue stream from the customers that you have, okay? And so one of the easiest ways to kind of model your business is on your recurring revenue growth and your recurring revenue levels. Now, we like to typically think of these as monthly recurring revenue, but in reality, since these are recurring members, as long as you're doing good by them, you can actually extrapolate these into annual numbers. And this will help you in budgeting for your rent, how much rent you're going to pay, how much money should a coach make, both as a salary annually and monthly that you're going to pay them if you break it back down, stuff like that. So it really helps you with your financial planning and valuation, and consider it like the bread and butter or the back squat or deadlift of your gym metrics, if you will. And kind of tailed right closely onto that, kind of a 1A, I would say, is your MRR growth rate. And I think this is important because I haven't met a lot of gym owners to date who think in terms of growth. That would be like someone coming into your gym and just saying hey, I want my back squat to be 225 forever. It makes no sense, right?
Yeah, that'd be a problem.
The whole point of doing this is to have growth.
Yep.
So if you're not thinking in terms of MRR growth rate, then you're not thinking about things correctly. And so the way I try and frame this is it's going to vary over time, and it's going to decay over time because it's hard to grow when you get bigger. But when you're under $20,000 the smaller you get, this number should be bigger, but let's just say 5 to 10% a month is a healthy growth rate. And once you get over 20,000, especially once you get over 50,000, you could be growing anywhere from like 2 to 3 to 4 to 5% a month.
Mm.
Those could have a good growth rate, but give yourself a goal and shoot for it. We're all competitive as hell. So like, again, if someone came to your gym and they're like, hey, my back squat can just stay at 225, you probably wouldn't even want to coach them. You know what I mean? Like, you want to work with people who want to grow, and you should want to grow as well.
Yep, 100%. I mean, uh, when you talk about ARR, you can also compound these and look at annual growth rates, which, obviously the numbers will change there. And what Dan's not suggesting is, just only look at this monthly, right? So make sure you look at those metrics on how they stack over the course of an entire year.
Oh, let's talk about that for 30 seconds.
Okay.
Here's the beauty of it. If you actually can grow at 7% a month, that's actually a lot. But if you can grow at 7% a month, you double every year, right? So the numbers of compounding growth work in your favor when you think of monthly. So if like 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but if you grow 5% a year, you're almost doubling every year. And that's a lot.
Yep.
So that's why and when you look at the numbers, like 5% month by month doesn't feel like a lot. So it actually feels achievable. So even growing 3% a month is significant to your growth.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and shameless plug here, like, part of what our job here at PushPress is to do is create the tools that will help you to do these things. And so investing in those tools, investing in the technology so that you can focus on growing the business is really critical. So using tools like Grow and not, going through and building your own damn website, so that you hand off those things to the experts, and then you focus in on growing your business so you have a chance at compounding 7% months, right?
Yep.
So,
and honestly, I think the most important thing in this, like, if you take one thing from this whole episode, it's this. If you focus on a monthly growth rate and you set yourself to that expectation and standard, you'll probably grow your business faster than anything you've ever expected before, just because you've never focused on it. So just do that.
yep, absolutely. Yeah. The third one is ARPU, average revenue per user. You could go average revenue per user.
Remember,
Essentially,
ARPU is a SaaS term, but remember,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And essentially, that's the average rate that if you took all your members, that's what they're paying when stacked over the course of a membership in a month, right? And so, what you want to try to do is stack enough value over time to where you're going to slowly have upsell opportunities, and that ARPU should be lifting each and every, couple of months. Whether I'm buying more personal training because I'm getting more value out of it, I'm buying additional services, buying additional retail, whatever it might be, right? And so, if you think about that in terms of just, again, what's the input for that metric? It's how much value can you drive into that customer with what you offer.
Yep. And if you think about it, there's only two ways to really drive ARPU, right? You can increase the value and thus the amount you charge on your core product, which would be probably your core membership or whatever the core business line you have is. And then you can also build add-on, ancillary, or other things for people to buy, additional revenue streams. I would recommend, don't worry about the additional revenue streams until you've kind of gotten a core value product to a very decent level. But those are really the two ways to drive ARPU. And going back to a recent podcast we did, grandfathering your clients' rates is the fastest way to kill your ARPU, right? So, you've got to make sure people are paying fair and current values. And as you increase the value in your business, you can raise your rates.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe to tie back some of what we've already discussed a little bit into ARPU here would be, we said the spoiler alert was that the number of members was not one of the most important metrics, okay? Well, if the number of members is not one of the most important metrics, and we want to also grow MRR, you're kind of out of ways to do that if you're not adding a bunch of new members. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't add. You should add new members. But what you should be doing is working relentlessly around the clock to drive value to members, not sell services. Drive value to services or to members. I think there's a difference there.
If you want to play it out infinitely, there is no scalability or leverage in adding members.
Correct.
Right? You cannot, there's a point where you can't take another member. So you have the addition of value to the existing member set is your primary goal. And then eventually you want to max out your operational efficiency to the number of members you can support. But that is a finite number. And we'll actually go over that mathematically later. Cool. So we got MRR growth rate, ARPU, average revenue per user or member. The next one is one that I've beaten the drum on for years now, which is churn rate, right? And the idea here is, speaking to thousands of gym owners, I hear that speaking to thousands of small business owners, not even a gym thing. All I hear from people is I need more members. And the reality is like, hey man, you've got members. And if you focus on them, hey, maybe you might drive the ARPU up, which will solve your problems that you're talking about. But if you've got, that old adage, if you've got a leaky bucket and you keep throwing more water in it, all you're going to do is just increase the amount of flow of things coming out of your bucket. So we need to fix the churn rate first. Um, and really, it's probably the thing that's it's most costly to you in your business, and it's actually the most impactful thing you can fix.
Yep.
We'll go over this in my favorite metric, which is going to be the magic ceiling, which later. But working on your churn rate is the biggest thing you can do. How do you do that?
Yeah. So it's like, how are we, again, it's going to be anything that helps a member realize the value that they get from what you offer. So it'll be things like, are you highlighting their PRs? And I think this manifests in a bunch of small ways that gym owners do, but maybe don't think about.
It's not intentional.
Right. And it needs to become more intentional.
Yeah, I think real quick, once you tie what you do to why you do it, this becomes different.
It's like
yeah,
right? It's like is it the Steve Jobs meme, right?
yeah.
PR bell.
Yep.
The PR bell is just a big signal for, I got value from this place, I'm stronger.
And everyone to give you
and everyone's like,
yeah. Same with like a belt, like when someone gets a stripe.
In belt tracking,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a moment of recognition.
It is a moment of recognition, right? So level tracking, PRs, are you getting people's goals and showing them how they actually achieve them, right? Like uh, Rob Schwartz, again, in our conversation yesterday, mentioned it wasn't goal tracking, it was connecting the client to what success looked like in their head, right? So anytime you can do that, you're going to help drive value. When you're driving value, you're going to drive down churn.
Yeah, I think one thing to call out here is everyone's success or value metric is different. Like for me, I don't care if I PR things anymore, but I would like to connect with other human beings in my community and build a community because I've just moved to a new area.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just assume everyone that comes in wants to get bigger, faster, stronger, more skilled at whatever it is you train in. Some people just might want to have a second place to go to because they work at home all day and they're sick of their kids yelling at them.
Right. So then what are those engagement data points, or what is the engagement that you're looking to foster? And again, I think that's the kind of the power of that statement that I heard yesterday, which was just connecting clients to their vision of success.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a really good way to look at it.
And so when you have members and they're getting value over a period of time, that becomes lifetime value. Right. So then your lifetime value is essentially going to look at like, what is your MRR, or sorry, your ARPU over the course of however long you retain a customer for. So if you can retain a customer for, say, 12 months, you take that, you have your ARPU, you start to get your LTV.
Yep. So LTV really is a combo, and that's why it's on the list here. These are in stacking order to some degree. It's kind of a combo stat between ARPU and churn rate. The longer someone will stay at your gym and the more money that they will spend per month turns into a higher valued customer over the lifetime that they will be a customer. Your goal obviously is to maximize that lifetime by reducing churn and maximize that monthly spend by increasing value, which will be reflective in a higher LTV. What does a higher LTV mean? It actually will help you understand how much a customer is worth every time someone walks in the door. This is how you can start to do the math. Someone walks in the door, if I know I sell 50% of them turn into a customer and a customer's LTV is $10,000, every time someone walks in the door, it's worth $5,000 to me every time.
Yep.
Now, if you can increase your sales rate, maybe that 5,000 becomes 6,000, right? But that's a powerful way to think about it, right? Like every lead I get is $5,000. If I don't email them back in time, I'd lost $5,000. That probably will light a fire under your ass to email them back, or
I don't know,
text them back in
pick
time.
up the phone when someone calls the gym.
Yeah. Like if that number, if literally I put $5,000 in front of you and I said, you have 3 seconds to pick up this $5,000 bill, you would pick that shit up. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's why LTV is a powerful driver in action.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree.
So the last one, this one, you're gonna have to bear with me. It is gonna take a little bit of math in your head and a little bit of maybe a pen and a paper to work out, but it's basically the magic ceiling, the magic formula to figure out where you're capped. Every business is capped magically by math, unmagically, right? It's just science actually. And the easiest way to explain this is you can take the number of new members you get per month, and then factor that into your total member count, right? and divide that by your churn rate, and that's going to give you a ceiling. So the example is this, like, let's say you get 10 new members a month, and your churn rate is 4%. Okay. So all you have to do is divide 10 by 4%, and that'll give you 250 members. And this is because at 250 members, 4% is 10. So you're going to churn 10, gain 10, stuck.
Yep.
All right. Now that's 4%. That is not the average in the industry. The average in the industry right now is about 8% churn. So 10 new members a month, which I feel is fairly aggressive.
That's fairly aggressive.
They're fairly aggressive. But let's say you get 10 new members a month, churn rate 8, math says 125. So a lot of people look at me and they're like, I don't know why I'm stuck at 100, 120, 125 members. It's like magically every gym is stuck at 120 members.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because their churn rate's about 8%. And they're gaining about 10.
And that has been the reason why the drive down the churn thing, because we just said 10 new members a month is fairly aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right? So you can play with the levers, but like if you're stuck at 75, you might be getting 5 members a month. Right. If you're stuck at 150, you might be getting your churn rate might be 6%.
Yep.
But whatever the numbers is, you can do the quick math and you can say, okay, if I have 250 max members and I make 200 members a month, the most money I can ever make is about 50 grand a month.
Yep.
That's it. If you want to increase that max ceiling, you've got to either drive your churn down or increase your lead flow. And that's how you look at the levers of your business. And to me, this is why these metrics are so important, because they turn into levers. They turn into action if you know how to control them.
Right. I 100% agree. Let's go into the bonus round. I know we're already getting long on time here. Bonus round, one of my favorite metrics, CAC, cost of acquiring a client, cost of acquisition. Not widely talked about. I'll only give it a quick rundown here, but it's essentially if you had to spend money to get a client, how much do you spend in order to acquire that client? And so when you're in a growth-based role, like I am here at PushPress, a big part of what you have to understand is how much can you afford to spend to acquire a client? And so as a gym owner, if I go to Dan and I say, Dan, you can acquire me as a client, it's going to cost you $500. Dan needs to know whether or not that's a good deal for him or if he's going to lose money in that equation. So that's one bonus metric.
Yeah, and so why this is kind of a level 2 metric is because once you know your LTV, and once you know this other thing, which is next called a gross margin, you can actually do the math to figure out if it's worth spending.
Yep.
Most gym owners, if you say, hey, it's going to cost you $1,000 for this lead, will say no, thank you.
Right.
But if your LTV is $8,000 and your gross margin is 50%, that's a 4x return on investment.
Yep.
And it becomes a no-brainer.
Exactly.
Right? Actually, it depends on your sales rate. There's more to this, but
yeah.
You see where we're going with this. So gross margin is one of those. Now we're talking about, like, we're getting into profitability. Margins in general is like you have to take out your costs, your expenses of running the product. So coaches pay, rent, things like that. So as we start to get deeper into the metrics, and this is why it's bonus level 2, because we could do a whole nother, we could do an episode on margin. We could do an episode on CAC and LTV, right? And go to 100%. Market. But gross margin is you need to start thinking about gross and net margins. Net will be profit. Gross will be like after cost of delivery of service. We have to start thinking about, like, what is this stuff costing us to deliver? Because if those things are out of whack, if it costs you $1 to deliver $1 of service, you're doomed. It doesn't matter what you do, and you've got to figure that out.
Right. Last bonus one,
NRR,
NRR, net revenue retention. I feel like people's eyes are going to gloss over, but we'll just essentially say, like, it's your ability to retain and increase value out of your customer.
Yeah, so the simplest definition of NRR, and to me, this is one of the most impactful metrics you can look at in your business once you get there, is because NRR, most people think of churn just as loss, but the people that do stay might spend more money, right? So it's a matter, like, think of it this way. If you have a gym and you lose 10 members, so you lose, let's say they each pay you $100 each, so that's $1,000 you lose, but the 90 people that stay pay you $10 more, you only lose 100 in the month. So it's a 1% loss, not a 10% loss, because you're expanding the 9 that stay. Right. So NRR is basically a combination of your gross revenue retention rates. So like the amount of churn revenue you're losing, but then you add back any churn or any revenue that you're gaining from the people that stay. So it actually makes you optimize churn and increase ARPU. That's kind of the stacking of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else to add? Put a bow on this one?
No, that's it for me. I think the question we can ask people is, what is the most impactful metric you guys are playing with in your gyms, or what are the one that you feel is the most? Did we miss one? Is there a metric that we just completely missed that you think is the most important in your gym? Hit us up, podcast@pushpress.com. We'd love to hear it. We will do a follow-up and just showcase anything you guys feed us. Thank you. Thanks for listening to another episode of the PushPress podcast, where we help gym owners, entrepreneurs, and fitness enthusiasts thrive with actionable insights, inspiring stories, and strategies for growth.
Don't forget to follow the show to stay updated on new episodes. And if you're ready for more, join our free Facebook community for gym owners. Check the show notes for the link, and we'll see you next time. Keep raising the bar for your business and community.